Good evening. Tonight I thought I'm going to tune in and bring up a topic which was discussed today in the Washington Post by op-ed writer Mark Thiessen. And I had to agree with this. I have been saying this in my videos that the high gasoline prices and even higher diesel prices here in the United States had a different cause outside the Ukrainian war and the issue about the Russian, oil deliveries and that sort of stuff. That has rattled the markets too, and it has added to our problems we're having. But the real issues I wanted to explain here to our viewers, which may not be aware of this. Now, Joe Biden ran on the platform of the ultra-left here in the United States, which is the green people basically with their global climate warming thing and the, reduction in fossil fuel consumption and everything else. So Trump had done the country a favor and opened up land leases to the oil companies on federal land and water, where they can lease the land and then drill for oil there. And Biden promised this, and that was part of the discussion in that first debate they had, was the issue about whether to allow drilling or not in the United States. And he said he wouldn't because he was concerned about the climate changes and this, that, and the other thing. Now, I don't want to get into the whole topic about climate change. From what I know is that the climate has always changed. We entered an ice age several thousands of years ago, if not millions of years ago, with the extinction of the dinosaurs and other things. That's produced the oil, gas, and everything else in the first place, because the entire globe was literally a rainforest at that point. And due to whatever circumstances there were, whether it was volcanoes, meteoroids, or what have you, some impact changed the climate. It darkened the stratosphere and the hemisphere, and it caused a cooling off of the surface and the ice age. Now, eventually the ice age will end, as these carbon dust or the dust settled from the fallout. And eventually you will have a natural increase in temperatures over a prolonged period of time. And so the ice age has been coming to an end. And of course, for us, 100 years is relatively long as a life, when you live a life as a person. But 100 years is nothing on the planet anyway. So the climate changes have been happening. There's been ongoing with humans and without humans. It really is irrelevant. The climate will change on our planet. There's no one disputes this from the scientific community. Whether we are accelerating this now or not, that's debatable. It could be possible. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Severe weather has always been in existence here on this planet, and it probably will be with us. There's times of moderation, and then it increases. It keeps changing. Now, that's all I'm going to say to the climate stuff. Now, with Biden, he promised this in that debate. He started out saying this. I've mentioned that in my earlier videos, that his mother drove him to school in whatever vehicle they had. I think that must have been in the early 1950s, and it was in Delaware, if I'm not mistaken. They had moved from Pennsylvania, where he was born, to Delaware, where he went to high school or to middle school. And his mother drove him to school, and he said it was raining oil. They had oil on their windshield. And I looked at this, I watched it, and that's when I turned off the television. And I mentioned that before I got rid of the television. And oil was plentiful back then, if you would speak figuratively. you would say, yeah, there was plenty of oil back then available, and the cars had big engines, and no one was worried about gasoline consumption and mileage and that sort of stuff. But what really blew the thing out of proportion of what he said is that he had it on a windshield. It was not literally raining oil, but this is how deranged this guy is. What he meant was that they were awash in oil. But the way this came across, literally, the way he said this was that it was literally downpouring oil. And either his engine blew up in his mother's car, and he had oil blowing out of the engine compartment into the windshield. Otherwise, you cannot have oil on the windshield. This is all I'm going to say to this. And this was clear to me that this guy was going after the oil thing, gasoline and diesel. And I did not vote for this. I'm naturally more of a libertarian, primarily. And I don't like government telling me what to do and what not to do. That's the bottom line in this. And so now with them getting elected, the first thing he did was he stopped the pipeline projects we had with Trump got going there. And then he stopped renewing leases or issuing new leases. So now we're having less and less lease land available for the oil companies to drill. And that has already last year pumped up the oil prices here. And like I said before, we have an issue with the aging refineries here, and there's not enough refining capacity. And some of these refineries have been taken offline because they're just so outdated. They have to go through major renovations and updates to be efficient again. And meanwhile, he's canceling these leases, so we're no longer actively drilling for oil, or only a much smaller portion than what we did with Trump. Now, Trump likes to claim that he brought the oil prices down, ways down, in 2020, when they did the shutdown here in the United States from the COVID-19 coronavirus thing, and that wasn't the case either. That was a collapse because no one drove anymore because people were basically on lockdown or they were afraid to go somewhere. So the gasoline, oil, diesel prices were artificially low, not caused because Trump did all of this great drilling stuff and gave up the land and all of this stuff. That wasn't the case. It was COVID which caused that particular drop, that the gas got as low as it did. Otherwise, it would have been pretty much stable at around $3 a gallon, a little bit more or less for 87 grade gasoline. Now, the reason too why I wanted to make this video today, for the very, very first time in our history here, the RBOB gasoline futures, that is the refined gas 87 grade. If you're outside the United States, if you're in Europe, 87 grade or 87 octane in the United States is the equivalent to 91 octane in Europe or in other places on the planet. We use a different formula, but in the end, these two gasolines have then they're exactly the same in terms of octane. So our 87 octane here, the 1 gallon quantity, was traded today for the first time over $4. This is the futures the refineries are selling to the gas stations. I do not know how large these contracts are, but it is probably a 100,000 gallon contract in that range, and you have to take them to delivery. And this is the July contracts, which I'm quoting here today. They're gonna be due for delivery in July. And I couldn't tell you exactly what date. I didn't look at that, but those are the ones which are coming up now for delivery in July. And we were like at $4.12 or $4.16 was the peak, and then it kind of settled down to $4.06. Then on top of that $4, this is now, you have the federal gas taxes, the state gas taxes, and whatever local gas taxes come on top of it, plus the markup of the gas stations. So this comes all on top of these $4.16. So you can imagine this is 87 grade. They also do sell the higher grades we have here in the United States, 87, 89, and 91 octane. 91 is our premium, which is 95 or 96 octane in Europe. And the mid-grade would be around 93 octane, somewhere around there, if you're in Europe or in other parts of the world. And they're usually about 15 cents apart. So if they're selling the contracts for $4.16 on 87, you would have 15 cents more for mid-grade and 30 cents more for the premium, which we have, which would be $4.46, which at the pump later on is going to be around $6 to $8, somewhere in that range, once it hits the market and by the time you're going to the pump and filling it in. And now, on top of this, when he was in Japan, Biden said to these people there in a press conference that this is actually, when he was asked about it, this is their goal. So we know now, I mean, he didn't make no bones about it in doing the campaign, but he's actually implementing this. What he said is to get Americans to drive less. And in essence, they're doing now exactly the same what they did with the cigarettes when they increased the cigarette taxes and more taxes and everything else. I still smoke. I'm a smoker. This hasn't really persuaded me not to smoke. I don't smoke as much as I did years ago, but I still smoke, and this had not really much to do with the price of the pack of cigarettes. That was just with my health and the way, whether I'm coughing or not, and what I enjoy, and that kind of stuff. I'm not persuaded by these things. Neither am I persuaded by higher gas prices to drive or not to drive. If I need to go somewhere, I will get there and I will do what I need to do. So I'm not complaining about it. And so we're having now this whole green socialist thing there going cooking here. At the same hand, he's going to Chevron, the oil company, and telling Chevron to resume talks with Venezuela to start getting Venezuelan oil back into the United States, so we don't have to pump anything here to, level it off. But their real goal is to go to electric vehicles. We don't have enough charging stations. These vehicles are not suitable for our roads for long distance driving. So instead of doing a normal transition and let the market regulate itself, with demand and supply, they're artificially decreasing the supply in this, trying to force people into electric vehicle. They either can't afford or you can charge, because there's not enough charging stations. The rough estimate is we needed like 1 million charging stations throughout the United States to properly, maintain or charge these vehicles. And I think at this point they have 15,000. So that tells you how far this is all off. Meanwhile, they're jacking up the oil prices and the gas prices on this whole thing artificially. So people go into electric cars, or they're supposed to be going into electric cars, and you cannot charge them anywhere. So this is how insane this whole thing is. This is not thought out. There's no real plan there. It is this other chaos what you see in Germany too with the socialists over there. This is basically the same mindset here in the United States with these left-wing Democrats you got. And the same thing is the Secretary of the Transportation was in Congress, just last week, and she was asked by one of the Republican congressmen if she thought that the gas prices were high, and she did not answer the question. She didn't say yes, the gas prices are high. She talked around it. She would not commit to this. So these people don't give a shit about it whether these gas prices are high. That's actually what they wanted. And you can see this in California too. California has the highest gas taxes on top of the federal gas taxes. They could go away with it, what they call a tax holiday, to reduce the burden of the gasoline on people who have to drive to work and that kind of stuff. But they don't. They can't come to a consensus because it is not wanted. And eventually what they're going to do, the Democrats, is they're going to drive the entire economy here with this thing into the ground, literally. And the much bigger problem is not the gas is bad as it is, but it is even worse with diesel. And the problem we're having here is that the entire economy runs on diesel because we need the trucks. Now, they have all their fancy projects, with the FedEx trucks having electric trucks, and UPS and the Postal Service and that sort of stuff, the small trucks. The van kind of a deal, electrified, and they're making a big fuss out of this. The problem is 18-wheelers. The great majority, as I said before, of merchandise here in the United States moves by cargo, say like from the West Coast to the Central section, or from the East Coast to the Central section, or down from the South, or across the country. But then once these containers primarily reach their destination, they go into a warehouse, and from there they're distributed by truck, usually to other states which are closer by, say like a 500-mile distance. And those trucks, that will add a lot. This can only be done by 18-wheelers. The entire food supply here is basically transported by 18-wheelers in either refrigerated trucks or freezer trucks or dry cargo, unpalletized. The stuff what you get in your supermarket. All of the stuff comes here by truck from centralized distribution warehouses. And as higher those diesel prices go, as higher the food prices are going to be. And this is the same for almost anything, what we still manufacture here, or whatever cargo has to move one way or the other, it's going to be delivered and done by truck. So they're in the process of not only trying to get people to drive to electric vehicles, but they're essentially driving with this insanity the entire economy into the ground. The experts, and I agree with them, estimate that we're going to be in a recession, in a very deep recession here, at the latest by the beginning of next year, with the ongoing oil issue and the high prices of diesel. The trucking companies and the truck drivers who own their own trucks, they're basically are at the forefront of this thing, because they're paying out of their behind on these high prices, and the freight rates are going up and up and up, and it becomes more and more expensive to ship something. And in the end, the customers, they're going to buy less and less, and that will then shrink down the entire economy. And before we know it, we're going to be in a very deep recession with a very high inflation on top of it, so we're going to have a stagnation. And that was orchestrated by Biden and his administration, and these kooks, these left-wing kooks who voted for this stuff. And now Biden is trying to reach out, like I said, to these rogue countries like Venezuela, where we put in sanctions because of the, socialist revolution they had down there. We really didn't want to buy anything from them. Now they're going back and wanting to buy from them, from Venezuela, and that kind of stuff, in other countries. And this is, you're looking at this stuff. This is just absolutely mind-boggling what these people do. And the Russian-Ukrainian war, actually enables them to get these gas prices and oil prices even higher, and they haven't made a bone about it. This is why the Hungarian president was so vehement about it, that he still is going to be able to get the Russian oil, because the Hungarian economy is also very dependent upon oil. And taking that oil off, and they're going to have the prices explode, and their economy is going down the same way the German economy with the natural gas is going to go down if they're going to cut this, or it's going to get very expensive. So this is the transition. The way these people think they're going to transition from one to the other is not very well thought out. It is absolutely chaotic, and that is typical for this left-wing environment. There's no real brain process involved in it. The right-wing side doesn't look anything better. This is not a picture of mental health there either, of the way they're thinking and how everything works, or what should be working. So the best thing would be a middle-of-the-road approach. I wanted to share this because this is coming, and it's going to complicate everything. I do not know if the elections in November for Congress, the midterm elections, are going to have a big impact on this, because a lot of the stuff is within discretion of the presidency, like the renewal of the leases, land leases and stuff like this for oil drilling. That includes water too, water areas like in the Gulf of Mexico, in those areas. And they would have to run Biden out of office, but this is where we're entering a very difficult time. There's nothing really to celebrate about. The left-wing people, I'm not quite sure of what they think this is going to be like. The right-wing people, from what I've gathered, they're growing their own food now, just to have food security, because of the fuel cost this is going to take with the trucking industry to get the stuff moved around. And fertilizer, of course, is affected by those things too. And then the farmers, all of the farm vehicles, tractors, combines and everything else what you need on a farm today, they need diesel to operate. As more expensive diesel is more expensive our food is going to be. So this is a spiral we have entered here, which is going downhill. I'm not one of these prepper guys, preparedness for this, that, or the other thing. I'm going to be okay. I can share that with you. And I think a lot of people are going to be okay, but it will be a difficult time, and it will not be necessarily for the better. And the poor people, I don't know if we should say poor people, but people who don't have the financial resources, they will be affected the most here in the United States. This is going to be families with young children, and the elderly, the people who are on a fixed income with Social Security, retirement, they're going to be heavily affected by this. And then the people who are receiving public assistance, or are basically on the bottom of the wage scale in this whole thing to begin with, whether going to and from work, whether paying rent, whether paying, for electricity and heat and hot water and food. That is going to be a very difficult thing. So the Democrats are in a process, full steam ahead, of setting the country up for a very, very difficult time ahead of us. And I think the Republican, if we had a Republican president come in here right now, we probably could stop some of this and feather the longer-term effects on this downturn. We will see what is going to happen in November. I do not know, since Congress, like I said, is not involved in a lot of these things. I do not know how they can stop Biden. I guess the other thing is what would start then if the Republicans were to take over. We may have impeachments again. I mean, we had, what, 2 or 3 of them with Trump, and it is quite possible that this is going to come right away out of the blue as soon as the new Congress then convenes for the first time next year in January. And that you probably can get prepared for if the Republicans get the majority in both houses. We will see. I would like to sit here and tell you everything is hunky-dunky-dory, but it is for you viewers to see on how you want to make adjustments in your life, or just to have an understanding of what is coming. I have not really changed anything of the way I live my life at this point. And for me, looking at the what's coming and what it is going to be like, it is there's not much of a change or impact this is going to have on me, because I don't drive very much to begin with, whether the cheap gas or expensive gas. And then I have a very limited food supply. I'm by myself, so I don't spend a lot of money on food, and I don't buy very expensive foods. I don't buy any of this junk food stuff to begin with. So my grocery bill has gone up maybe by 10% overall. But that is, for me as a single person, not a lot of money. We're looking maybe at $5 a week, maybe $10 a week, what I spent more than what I did last year at the same time. And that's how I have been affected by it, but it is on a very limited basis. So we will see. I wish everyone good luck with this. And maybe you want to look at your credit card bills, see if you want to pay down some credit cards now. Then you have more money available for gas and for food and for other things like heating. And maybe not buy anything at the moment what you don't need. I have basically stopped buying anything what I really don't need. So I'm saving cash basically. And that is so, just a little bit preparedness there. And I'm going to be all right. And I'm pretty certain about this. This is not the first time we have gone through this. We lived through 2007, 2008, and 2009. Once you made it through that, you're going to be okay on this one here too. But be prepared for it. It's going to be different than 2008, but it's going to be similar on the erraticness of the market and everything else. And the stagflation in this is going to be the killer, because it is more difficult to come out of a stagflation than it is to come out of a recession, just out of a recession. Then the prices usually, and everything else is more in a balance. Even though after in 2009, when we came out of the recession, the oil prices, of course, with Obama, that was the first thing there too. With this green stuff, the oil prices went up and they stayed pretty high until 2014, when things started to level off a little bit and things got readjusted. That's what I wanted to share with you guys tonight. And with that, you have a great evening.